10 really high-impact habits.
Hmm.
Our mission today isn't just to give you a list. We want to unpack the why behind them.
Hmm.
The psychological stuff, the physiological reasons these habits actually work.
Yeah, we want to get beyond the usual self-help cliches, show you the sort of science of how these daily actions can genuinely transform things.
Okay, so let's start there. This idea that success isn't about massive overnight changes.
That's exactly right. So many people know they should maybe read more or wake up a bit earlier, but they find it hard to stick with it. And often that's because they don't fully grasp the why. They don't get the leverage concept.
A leverage.
Yeah. Real lasting success, it doesn't just pop out of nowhere from some huge effort. It really comes from these small, simple steps you take every single day. Things that compound over time.
Like investing, but for your life.
Precisely. The real power is just in that consistency. And today we're going to look at how you can kind of anchor that consistency using a bit of behavioral science.
All right, let's dig in. We'll start with how we can, take ownership of our time and attention. How to shift from feeling like we're always catching up, that reactive mode.
The hamster wheel.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Into being more proactive, more intentional. Okay, so the first habit, it feels like the ultimate act of taking ownership. Wake up early and own your morning. Now, I know this one can be a bit controversial.
Oh, yeah, definitely, especially for self-proclaimed night owls.
Right. But the source material really argues that the morning is, well, the most leverageable part of the day. The key reason seems to be it's the only time that's truly yours, before the world starts demanding things.
There's a physiological angle here, too, which is pretty important. See, when you wake up, your body releases cortisol. That's the stress hormone.
Yeah, it usually seems a bad thing.
Well, yes and no. When it's managed right, it's basically your natural built-in alarm clock. It helps with morning focus. But if you're rushing, hitting snooze until the very last second.
Which is tempting.
Oh, absolutely. But then you're throwing all this external chaos, emails, notifications, maybe family stuff, right into that critical initial cortisol spike. So you immediately start the day feeling stressed, feeling reactive.
Okay. So the goal isn't just about getting more minutes in the day. It's about getting high-quality minutes when our brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex, the planning part,
the decision-making hub.
when that part is fresh.
Precisely. We really need to respect our circadian rhythm, our internal body clock. So by waking up even just, say, 30 minutes or an hour earlier than you absolutely have to, you create this buffer zone.
A quiet space.
Yes. And this quiet time lets you use that initial cognitive peak for really high-value stuff, like reflection or planning or maybe meditating. You're essentially preloading your self-control reserves for the day.
That makes sense, like charging your mental battery first thing.
Exactly. And studies actually show this. When people use that first hour for intentional tasks, things they've chosen to do, they tend to experience less decision fatigue later on.
Decision fatigue. That's a real energy drain.
It is. So you've basically shifted your most demanding thinking to the start of the day when you have the most mental bandwidth available.
I like that focus on bandwidth. It makes it feel less like a moral failing if you struggle with mornings. But for someone listening who really truly struggles with this, the lifelong late sleeper, do the sources offer any flexibility? Or is it a strict get up at dawn rule?
No, it's not necessarily a hard rule about needing a 4:30 a.m. start, thankfully. It's more about the principle, claiming enough time to complete a personal routine before the world's demands kick in. The sources do acknowledge that genetics play a role, our chronotypes. But they argue that even night owls can benefit psychologically from having a planned, intentional start to their day, even if their whole schedule is shifted later.
So it's about the intention, not the specific hour on the clock.
Exactly. The critical idea is moving away from that feeling of rushing and reacting, moving towards creating your day deliberately. And that naturally leads to more clarity and, well, growing confidence, too. And speaking of clarity, that's immediately reinforced by habit number 6, plan tomorrow tonight. This one is all about making sure that direction and purpose come before the action starts.
Right. This sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? Just make a list. But it tackles something huge, that cognitive load we carry around. Why is writing down what you need to do tomorrow before bed so much better than trying to figure it out in the morning rush?
Yeah, it seems basic, but it connects directly to how our working memory operates. You can think of your brain like a computer with, let's say, limited RAM. If you've got unresolved tasks just sort of floating around in your head, things you haven't quite defined or scheduled, they actually consume that cognitive bandwidth. even when you're trying to sleep. Psychologists have a name for this. It's called the Zeigarnik effect.
Zeigarnik effect.
Yeah.
Okay, what's that?
It's the tendency for unfinished or interrupted tasks to stick in your memory more vividly, constantly demanding your attention.
That's that feeling. When you're lying in bed trying to remember that one thing you forgot to write down, it's so annoying.
It is. It's insidious. So the simple act of writing down maybe just 2 or 3 critical tasks for the next day before you go to sleep, it basically externalizes your working memory.
Like saving the file.
Exactly. You're essentially telling your brain, look, it's handled, it's logged, you can relax now. And this frees up mental space, which usually leads to better sleep. And it definitely reduces that inertia you feel in the morning.
Right. That, where do I even start feeling?
Precisely. You eliminate that morning waste of energy asking, okay, what should I tackle first? Because you already know.
So the sources are really saying the power here isn't just about saving, 5 minutes scrambling for a plan in the morning. It's about creating this mental quiet.
Yes. Mental quietude. That's a good way to put it.
And that small daily planning habit, it compounds. It leads to big long-term results because you're consistently pointing your efforts towards the important stuff, not just getting caught up in busy work.
You're directing your focus intentionally day after day.
Okay, so we've claimed some time with the early rising. We've set the direction by planning ahead. Now we move to actually conditioning the mind for all this effort. That brings us to habit 7. Meditate or spend quiet time alone. The source material puts this beautifully. Silence is power in a noisy world.
Yeah, and it's really not optional anymore. It feels like a necessity just to maintain your ability to focus in this digital age we live in.
It's constant noise, isn't it?
It really is. And when we just sit quietly, even for, say, 5 minutes, we start to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the rest and digest system. It moves us out of that constant low-level fight or flight state that so many of us live in. We need to consciously downregulate.
I think a lot of people get intimidated by meditation, though. They think they need to completely empty their mind, achieve some kind of perfect blank state.
Right, which feels impossible.
Exactly.
And that's probably the biggest misconception. The real point of meditation, or even just sitting quietly without any specific technique, is simply to notice where your mind goes without judging it.
Just observe the thoughts.
Yeah, just watch them drift by. The sources really stress the actionable minimum here. Maybe just 5 minutes of focusing on your breath, feeling it go in and out, or just sitting quietly. This simple act actually stimulates something called the vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve, I've heard of that.
It's really important. It helps regulate your heart rate, and it can even reduce systemic inflammation in the body. Think of it like hitting a biological reset button.
Okay, so it's not about achieving thoughtlessness. It's more about creating a little bit of space between a stimulus, something that happens, and how you react to it.
That's it, exactly. That space, that pause, is the crucial margin you need to make intentional choices, rather than just reacting emotionally or habitually.
That makes sense. It gives you a moment to choose your response.
Right. And it's honestly the ultimate tool for reducing anxiety and just reconnecting with your own thoughts. If you never create any silence, your own inner voice gets completely buried under all the external noise, other people's demands, the endless news cycle.
You lose touch with yourself.
You really do. You lose touch with your own internal compass. So by creating that little bit of quiet time each morning, you help ensure that the decisions you make throughout the day are actually rooted in your priorities, not just whatever's shouting the loudest from the outside.
Okay, so we've laid down that mental foundation, getting intentional, getting clear. Now we need to talk about the engine that actually powers all of this, the body. This is part 2, focusing on the physical building blocks.
Yeah, this is crucial because you can have the sharpest mind and the best laid plans, but if your body is running on fumes, if it's sedentary,
all thing falls apart.
Pretty much. So these next habits are about making sure your physical self can actually support that mental drive we've just talked about.
All right, habit 2, move your body daily. We all kind of know movement is essential, right? It's a non-negotiable for overall health. But let's go a bit deeper than just exercise is good for you. What are the specific cognitive benefits for someone listening? How does moving actually help our thinking?
Okay, so the primary cognitive boost comes from something called BDNF. That stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
BDNF.
Think of BDNF like Miracle-Gro, but for your brain cells.
Mm.
Physical movement, even pretty light movement, triggers your body to release more BDNF.
Wow. Okay.
And this BDNF supports the growth of new neurons, and it strengthens the connections between existing ones. It's particularly active in the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain heavily involved in memory and learning.
That's fascinating. So taking a short walk isn't just good for my heart. It's literally making my brain better, helping me learn and remember things.
Exactly. It's directly impacting your brain's hardware and software, you could say. And there's more. Movement also dramatically improves how efficiently your mitochondria work.
Mitochondria. Those are the powerhouse of the cells, right? From biology class.
That's them, the energy factories. If your mitochondrial function is poor, you feel sluggish, you get that mental fog. Daily movement improves their function, giving you more sustainable, steady energy throughout the day. It's way better and lasts longer than, say, a caffeine hit.
Okay, that makes sense. Steady energy versus a spike and crash.
Precisely. And this is why the sources are really clear about making movement accessible. You don't need a fancy gym membership or complicated workouts. Simple things work. Stretching when you wake up, taking a brisk walk on your lunch break, maybe 5 minutes of dancing in your kitchen.
Dancing counts. Excellent.
Absolutely. These simple actions are often enough to hit what we might call the minimum effective dosage, the MED, for getting those cognitive benefits.
I like that minimum effective dosage. It takes the pressure off.
Wow.
Because I know I struggle sometimes with thinking, well, if I can't do a full 45-minute workout, I might as well just skip it. How does that idea of progress, not perfection, fit in here?
Yeah, that all or nothing thinking is a real trap. The motivational analogy the sources use is really helpful here. Think of your daily movement, whatever it is, as a non-negotiable meeting with your future self.
Okay. I'm meeting with my future self.
Even if it's just 10 minutes. It's a profound act of self-respect. If you skip that meeting, you're basically sending a message that your future health and well-being aren't really a priority.
Ouch. That hits home.
So the focus has to be on maintaining the chain of consistency. Just showing up. The danger zone is when you miss 2 days in a row. That's when the habit really starts to weaken and erode. So the goal is just daily movement, regardless of how intense it is, just to keep that BDNF flowing and those mitochondria happy.
Okay, speaking of fueling the system, let's move to habit 8, which is eat mindfully. We often treat food as, I don't know, a reward, or maybe just a way to distract ourselves. But the sources frame this very differently. It's like the ultimate input-output decision for sustainable energy.
Yeah, it really is. This habit is fundamentally about managing your glucose regulation, your blood sugar levels. Our brain, in particular, is incredibly sensitive to having a stable supply of glucose.
All right.
When we eat really quickly or we eat a lot of highly processed sugary stuff, we cause these sharp spikes and then inevitably crashes in our blood sugar.
The sugar rush, then the slump.
Exactly. And that slump manifests as irritability, mental fog, energy dips.
Yeah.
Basically all the things that completely derail the intentionality we were talking about earlier.
So eating mindfully isn't just about managing weight, although it might help with that. It's actually an immediate strategy for keeping your brain stable and focused.
Absolutely. It's a cognitive performance strategy.
So what are the specific actionable things we can do? How do we actually become more mindful eaters?
Well, the simplest things are often the most powerful. 2 key ones are drinking enough water and deliberately eating more slowly.
Okay, water and slowing down. Tell me more.
Well, drinking water first often helps because mild dehydration can actually masquerade as hunger or fatigue. So sometimes what you think is a craving is just your body needing fluids.
Ah, interesting. Drink first, then see if you're still hungry.
Right. And eating slowly tackles the hormone lag. When you eat too fast, there's a delay before your stomach sends the I'm full signals hormones like leptin and ghrelin up to your brain.
So you overshoot before your brain gets the message.
Precisely. By consciously eating more slowly, maybe putting your fork down between bites, chewing more thoroughly, you give your body the time it needs to register fullness. This helps prevent overconsumption and also avoids that massive energy drain that comes from your body having to digest a huge amount of food all at once.
The sources really emphasize this strong connection. Treat your body well, and your mind follows. When the body feels good, maintained, fueled properly.
The mind feels sharper, clearer.
Yeah, it leads to just feeling more alive, more present each day. It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's hard to focus on long-term goals when your gut health is maybe making you feel foggy or irritable right now.
And that connection is very real. We talk about the gut-brain axis. The health of your microbiome, the bacteria in your gut, directly influences the production of neurotransmitters, including things like serotonin, which impacts mood.
Wow. So mindful eating isn't just physical. It's actually a foundational mental health practice too.
It absolutely is. Every single meal becomes a decision that directly impacts your cognitive function, your energy levels, and your emotional stability for the next few hours. It's quite profound when you think about it that way.
Okay, so we've worked on the schedule, we've fueled the engine. Now let's dive into part 3, the internal rewiring. These are the habits really designed to directly change our mental state, tweak our internal narrative, and boost our long-term intelligence. Basically harnessing our brain's ability to change itself.
Yes, tapping into neuroplasticity.
And the first one here, habit 3, is practice gratitude. This feels like the ultimate technique for deliberately shifting your brain's focus, moving it away from constantly scanning for problems or what's missing.
The scarcity mindset.
Right. Towards noticing abundance, noticing what's actually good. I'm really curious about the mechanism here. How does simply writing down 3 good things actually, change the wiring in your brain?
This is a fantastic example of neuroplasticity in action. You see, as humans, our brains evolved with a built-in negativity bias.
Right. Survival depended on noticing threats.
Exactly. It kept our ancestors alive. But in modern life, it often just makes us anxious and stressed. Gratitude journaling is like the conscious override button for that bias.
Okay.
When you consistently practice gratitude, actively looking for things to appreciate, you are literally exercising and strengthening the neural pathways connected to the medial prefrontal cortex. That's an area of the brain linked to reward, positive feelings, and even moral thinking.
Wow. So by forcing ourselves gently to look for the good, we're strengthening the feel-good parts of the brain and maybe weakening the panic parts.
That's a great way to put it. You are literally decreasing activity in the amygdala, which is the brain's fear center. Research actually shows that consistent gratitude practice leads to measurable reductions in the stress hormone cortisol.
Less cortisol is definitely good.
Absolutely. So by repeatedly directing your attention to positive things, could be tiny things, like the sunrise, a kind word someone said. Just the fact that you're alive and breathing, you are training your brain to stop its default scanning for problems and deficits. Instead, it starts noticing opportunities, blessings, the good stuff.
But really reframes gratitude, doesn't it? It's not just some kind of fluffy, feel-good exercise.
Yeah.
It's actually a strategic psychological tool.
It is. It's a tool for managing your stress chemistry and deliberately shaping your focus.
And I imagine it compounds, like the other habits.
Tremendously. The more you practice noticing the good things, the more evidence your brain gathers that life, generally speaking, is supportive or at least has good elements. And this can fundamentally shift your default mindset away from anxiety and more towards a grounded optimism. It builds resilience, not by ignoring problems, but by building a stronger, internal positive state that can better handle challenges when they do arise.
Okay, so if gratitude helps shape our internal environment, habit 4, read every day, is all about expanding outwards, continuously growing our knowledge base, broadening our perspective. The sources use a great metaphor. Reading is like having conversations with the smartest minds in history.
It really is. And it's probably the single highest leverage activity you can do for continuous cognitive expansion. Think about it. When we read longer form content like a book or a detailed report or even an in-depth article, we're forced to maintain focus.
Yeah, sustained focus.
Yeah.
Which is getting harder.
It really is. We have to follow complex ideas, track narrative arcs, connect different concepts. This is basically an exercise for your attention muscle, which is definitely getting weaker in our age of constant pings and notifications.
Just 15 minutes a day, the sources suggest. That seems doable. But what should we be reading? Does it matter? Is scrolling news headlines the same as reading a book in terms of benefits?
That's a great question. The sources strongly lean towards active reading of more complex material, so challenging nonfiction, high-quality literature, things that make you think. This is different from passively scrolling through headlines or social media feeds.
Active reading. What does that involve?
It means engaging with the text, asking yourself questions as you read, trying to connect the ideas to what you already know, maybe even using techniques like the Feynman technique.
Oh, Richard Feynman.
Yeah.
Explain it simply.
Exactly. Try to explain the concept you just read in simple terms, as if you were teaching it to someone else. This forces your brain not just to passively absorb the information, but to really process it, wrestle with it, and integrate it into your existing knowledge.
Okay, so it's about depth, not just volume. That commitment to active reading is key then. And beyond just learning new words, which is obviously useful for thinking clearly, how does this kind of reading actually change the way we see the world?
Well, it builds context. Knowledge on its own is useful, sure, but context is where wisdom comes from. Reading widely, history, psychology, different cultures, systems thinking, it broadens your understanding of, well, everything. Human motivation, how systems work, why things are the way they are.
Start seeing patterns.
Exactly. You start recognizing patterns. Maybe you avoid mistakes that others have made countless times before because you've read about them. It also enhances your theory of mind.
Theory of mind.
Yeah, that's the ability to understand that other people have different beliefs, different perspectives, different intentions than you do. Reading stories, especially fiction, is fantastic exercise for this. And understanding others better makes you a much better communicator, a better collaborator, a better decision maker in any complex social situation like work or family life.
So reading every day is like making a daily deposit in your intellectual bank account.
That's a perfect analogy. It ensures you're always growing, always learning something beyond just your immediate day-to-day experiences.
All right, we've set our intentions, fueled the body, started rewiring the mind. This final section, part 4, looks at the crucial external factors and how we kind of close the loop on daily growth. It's about setting boundaries and making reflection a habit. Okay, habit 5 is, well, it feels absolutely critical right now. Limit screen time. This is really about reclaiming our focus and maybe even our joy from the grip of digital distraction. We all know the trap, right? Hours just vanishing while scrolling.
Mindless scrolling.
Yeah, comparing our messy reality to someone else's highlight reel online and just feeling drained afterwards.
It's more than just wasted time, though. It's about how these platforms are designed. They essentially hijack our dopamine system.
Ah, dopamine, the reward chemical.
Exactly. Social media apps, news feeds, they're often built using principles of a variable reward system. It's the same mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive.
Unpredictable rewards.
Right. You never know when you'll see something interesting, get a like, a comment, a new notification. Each little hit gives you a tiny dopamine squirt. This creates a really powerful addictive loop that keeps pulling your attention away from deeper, more meaningful work, or even just engaging with the real world around you.
Wow. When you put it like that, it sounds pretty sinister. It makes the task of limiting it feel huge, almost impossible, especially if your job involves being online a lot. How do the sources suggest we manage this near addiction without, having to become a hermit?
Yeah, it's not about throwing your phone in the river. It's about regaining control. The strategy is really about setting surgical boundaries.
Surgical boundaries, okay.
So setting small, specific, manageable limits that you treat as non-negotiable. For example, maybe you decide no social media apps or news sites until after your most important work task is done. Or perhaps you restrict those apps to only, say, 30 minutes total per day, and you schedule that time intentionally.
Scheduling your distraction time.
Kind of, yeah. Another key tactic is managing notifications. Move those tempting app icons off your home screen. Better yet, turn off most notifications entirely. You want to disrupt that constant Pavlovian bell ringing, that variable reward loop.
So the payoff isn't just getting back some hours in your day. It's actually about resensitizing your brain, making it appreciate normal life again.
That's a huge part of it. You use the time you reclaim to actually live. Go outside, talk to a real person face-to-face, experience unstructured moments that aren't mediated by a screen. Digital consumption is mostly passive. Real-life engagement is active, and it's rewarding in a much deeper, more sustainable way. When you stop constantly outsourcing your attention and entertainment to algorithms, your brain chemistry starts to normalize, and you feel more like a participant in your own life, not just an observer.
Okay, moving from digital boundaries to social ones. Habit 9 focuses squarely on your social environment. Surround yourself with positive people. This one can be tough, but the sources state it pretty bluntly. Your mindset is largely a product of your environment. And the people around you, they're either lifting you up or pulling you down. Accelerators or anchors.
Yeah, there's that famous quote, right? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. As the sources actually explain why this tends to be true, even for things like habits and income levels. It comes down to a couple of psychological phenomena. One is emotional contagion. We literally catch moods from people around us. The other is the mirror neuron system in our brains.
Mirror neurons.
Yeah.
They help us understand and imitate others.
Exactly. We subconsciously mimic the emotions, the attitudes, the behaviors, even the level of ambition of the people we're close to. So if you consistently spend time with people who are negative, maybe cynical, or just kind of lazy, you inevitably start absorbing that energy. Their default settings, their low standards for effort or optimism can slowly become your normalized baseline.
That makes so much sense. It feels like an energy drain sometimes, doesn't it?
Mhm.
If you're trying really hard to build these positive habits, we're talking about getting up early, moving, reflecting, but your main social circle constantly dismisses it or makes fun of it.
You're fighting an uphill battle. You're swimming against the current of your own support system. Absolutely. And the sources stress the flip side. If you deliberately surround yourself with people who are pushing for growth, people who maintain a sense of optimism even when things are tough, people who are actively trying to better themselves, that will naturally raise your own level of aspiration.
Their standards become your standards.
Exactly. They set a higher, more positive benchmark for what seems possible, for what's considered normal effort. So consciously curating your inner circle, choosing who you give your time and energy to, is presented as one of the most proactive, highest leverage decisions you can possibly make for your own well-being and future growth. It really dictates the quality of your conversations, your perceived limitations, and maybe even the whole trajectory of your life. It's a big one.
And that brings us to the final habit, habit 10. This feels like the capstone that pulls everything together. It transforms all the daily actions into actual usable wisdom. Reflect and learn every day. This is about ensuring we get faster growth through disciplined self-assessment.
Yes, because without reflection, all the other habits, the planning, the moving, the reading, they're just a series of experiences. They don't automatically become wisdom.
Right. You could just be busy, not necessarily getting better.
Exactly. Wisdom requires metacognition. That's essentially thinking about your own thinking. And the simple nightly process the sources outline is designed to trigger this. Just taking a few minutes to ask yourself two really powerful questions. First, what went well today? And second, what could I do better or differently tomorrow?
Okay, those seem deceptively simple, but I can see how they connect back. What went well? That reinforces the gratitude muscle we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
Celebrating small wins, building that sense of competence.
Precisely. It wires in the positive. And the second question, what could be done better? That's your continuous improvement engine. This process forces your brain to engage in what's called memory consolidation. By actively reviewing the day's events, you're processing those experiences more deeply and filing them away into your long-term memory in a more organized way.
So you actually learn from mistakes instead of just repeating them subconsciously.
That's the goal. You're essentially becoming your own coach, actively engineering your own learning curve based on real-world feedback.
It really highlights the difference between, say, doing something 100 times and just having 100 experiences versus doing something 100 times and having maybe 99 lessons learned along the way.
Beautifully put. It closes the loop perfectly. The person who plans their day, acts on the plan, and then reflects on the results is always going to outpace the person who just acts without reflection, because they're constantly adjusting their approach based on real data, the data generated by their own life. It ensures that those small, daily, deliberate actions actually turn into significant wisdom over time. And that really is the ultimate aim of living intentionally. #tagoutro.
Wow. Okay, that was quite an intensive deep dive into what feels like the foundational mechanics of changing your life. We started with grabbing control of those crucial first hours, waking up early, planning ahead.
Setting the stage.
Then we talked about powering the system, moving your body daily, eating mindfully. Then the internal work, practicing gratitude, reading to expand your mind.
Rewiring the software.
Yeah. And finally, managing the external world, setting boundaries with screens, choosing your company wisely, and sealing it all with that daily reflection. 10 habits.
And remember, the pressure isn't on you, the listener, to perfectly implement all 10 starting tomorrow morning. That's overwhelming.
Right. Start small.
Absolutely. Choose just one or two. Whichever habit resonates most strongly with where you feel the biggest drain or the biggest need right now, maybe it's just committing to those 5 minutes of quiet time. Or maybe tonight, just write down those 3 important tasks for tomorrow.
Because the whole framework really rests on consistency over intensity, doesn't it?
That's the core principle. Once one habit starts to become automatic, almost effortless, it frees up your cognitive bandwidth, it takes less willpower, and then you have more mental energy available to start integrating the next habit into your routine.
Because that core message from the source material is worth repeating one last time. Real, lasting success, it isn't built from these massive, dramatic, often unsustainable upheavals.
No. It's built brick by brick, through small, strategic steps, done consistently, day after day, leveraged by understanding a little bit about how your own psychology works. You genuinely have the power to change your life, one habit at a time.
It feels empowering when you framed it that way.
It is. And just as we close out this deep dive, maybe consider the powerful connections between all these habits that we explored today. Perhaps the most potent link running through all 10 is this. It's about the deliberate choice you make to control your input.
Input, meaning?
Meaning what you read, the positive people you choose to spend time with, the mindful food you eat, the boundaries you set around digital noise. You actively manage the quality of that input.
In order to optimize your output.
Exactly. Your output being your reflection, your clarity of thought, your energy levels, your intentional actions throughout the day. If you consciously curate the quality of what you let into your mind and body, using some of the science we touched on, neuroplasticity, cognitive bandwidth, you dramatically simplify the challenge of managing the results you get in life.
So the provocative thought to leave everyone with is maybe this.
Where in your daily routine right now are you maybe unconsciously allowing low-quality, energy-draining input, whether it's mindless scrolling, negative conversations, unhealthy food choices, and how might that input be fundamentally shaping or maybe even distorting the quality of your life's output?
That awareness, that connection between input and output.
That awareness is often where the next real stage of transformation begins.